Before we get started, I'd like to thank Ratalaika Games for providing me with a review code. Despite the fact that I put lesbian fanfiction at the end of my last video on one of their releases, they were still willing to provide me with a review code for this release. Dino Land is available right now for $6 on all major platforms. Thank you once again to Ratalaika Games for being cool enough to provide me with a review code. Now, let's get on with the video. Before clicking on this video, you'd probably never heard of Dino Land before. I'll be honest, before seeing Ratalaika's skeet about their upcoming re-release, I'd never heard of this game before. Dino Land is a 1991 Sega Genesis game that was apparently notable enough to get a Wikipedia page, but not notable enough for anyone to write more than 5 sentences about it. So why was I interested in even picking this thing up? 2 words: dinosaurs and pinball. If you've actually kept up with my channel, you'll know that I have very normal and non-sexual thoughts about pinball games. I've certainly never had any naughty dreams about them, nor have I fantasized about human pinball table intercourse. So of course, telling me you're releasing a pinball video game is a good way to pique my interest. And it's just icing on my cake that this game is also about dinosaurs, one of the coolest things anything can ever be about. So can this game, which only ever achieved middling reviews and a short stub of a Wikipedia article, satisfy my needs? Is it a hidden gem of the era, or should it have stayed forgotten? Well, in short, it's certainly no hidden gem. I was going to beat around the bush with some kind of build-up, but I think it's best to put the conclusion first with this game. Dino Land is bad. I was primed to come into this with a positive mindset, but this game just isn't fun to play. For starters, it runs about as well as a fossilized velociraptor. This early Genesis game chugs, and this isn't the fault of the porting team as far as I can tell. I ran the ROM through Kega Fusion, my old reliable, as well as Blast EM, and in all cases the frame rate was wildly inconsistent. So either this game is an up-till-now unheard-of moose test for emulators, or this game was just programmed poorly. I'm going to assume the latter, but if I ever find a Dino Land cartridge in the wild and it miraculously runs better on my analog Mega SG, I'll write a pinned comment or something. Oscillating between stuttering and smooth frame rates is a great way to make the playing experience bad all on its own, but this also comes with some hefty physics issues. Sometimes the ball will just do whatever it feels like, teleporting anywhere it pleases. In an attempt to tame the terrible physics, the original developers opted to make cradling very strong in this game. Like in Sonic Spinball, keeping your flipper held up will pretty much always stop the ball dead in its tracks. This means you can't perform a hold pass. Cradling and hold passes are very important techniques in pinball control. So important, in fact, that I almost want to start a gimmick Blue Sky account that just documents which pinball video games allow you to perform these techniques. You might think that with such abysmal physics and frame rates, the creators would have gone for the triple threat and made screen crunch a problem too. Thankfully, visibility is not an issue in Dino Land, but it does come at the cost of making the tables pretty boring. There's just Not a lot that actually happens on the table. No interesting habit rails or anything that makes these tables really stand out. Pokemon Pinball can get away with somewhat blander designs because of the core conceit of catching Pokemon. The tables change in subtle ways, and Pokemon perform the game's key functions. The Sky and Sea tables certainly have a little bit more interesting things going on, but it's very difficult to even get to them, so you're more than likely going to be spending a lot of time on the boring land table. In fact, getting to the other tables is its own point of frustration. There are two methods to travel to the Sky or Sea tables. Get lucky on the slots, or go through some esoteric steps to initiate travel. In my playthrough, I never got to another table through the slot machine, so that left the esoteric route. To initiate travel, you have to shoot the ball to the top right of the land table and set 4 switches to the same color, either red or blue. Then you drop down to the lower table and defeat the grey dinosaurs circling the area. A couple seconds later, a group of orange dinosaurs will appear, and defeating them will change the drain to a portal which sends you to the area you've unlocked. This is some of the closest that Dino Land gets to feeling like a good pinball game, like Pokemon Pinball. Pokemon Pinball has you target specific areas of the table during different steps of the catching and evolution mechanics, subtly training you to get better at ball control. Unfortunately, Dino Land has you do this on a compressed table with Wonkosaurus physics. Successfully targeting the 4 switches is, in itself, a Herculean feat. The ball will often move past a switch to light it, bounce back, and move past the same switch to undo the color change, leading to minutes of making 0 progress. Oftentimes I would get 3 all in one color and then have to pray for a miracle to let me change the final one. The manual, which is included with this release of the game, doesn't even tell you about this travel method. You just have to figure it out yourself. And given that no special text or lights appear, getting all the switches to one color doesn't make the next step in any way obvious. I only figured this out by consulting a game FAQs made by someone who I am confident is the #1 Dino Land fan. Dinosaur Reserve, you're an absolute legend. You went on Game FAQs, uploaded a single detailed guide about this specific game, and dipped. I can only hope you didn't drop your crown on your way out. I hope my comment section is filled with nothing but dinosaur emotes in honor of this titan among men. Once you get to the Sea or Sky table, you have to be extra careful because draining the ball sends you straight back to the land table, and then you have to start the whole process over again. The land, sea, and sky tables have their own special methods of unlocking the boss. On the land table, you have to hit a specific hole near the big dinosaur 6 times. On the sea, you have to hit a specific hole near the top of the table 6 times, but for some reason the hole has a smaller activation box, so the ball will just roll over it most of the time. On the sky, you have to defeat the pterodactyl circling the egg at the top of the table 8 times, and then hit the arrow at the center of the table from the bottom. All of the boss tables are very similar, with a big dinosaur moving all around the center, and his little fucklet henchmen circling around. If the fucklet dinosaur touches the pink dinosaur, the boss table immediately ends and you have to retry the whole thing. The goal is to hit the big boss enough times before the fucklet can get to the pink lady. In order to buy some time, you can use Dinoland's one unique mechanic, transformation. On boss tables only, unless you enable cheats, you can press a button to unroll the pinball into a bipedal dinosaur. The green dinosaur can move about freely in 8 directions, and making contact with the fucklet while uncurled will cause him to change directions. Touching the boss will immediately re-roll your dinosaur back into a ball, so the boss challenge presents an interesting balance of focusing damage on the big guy while also managing your transformation energy to fend off the fucklet. The most interesting boss is the big crab under the sea since it has 2 phases, and the most frustrating boss is the pterodactyl because it's so fucking big. Unfortunately, the bosses and transformation mechanic don't really save this game. If I'm being honest, I have a hard time justifying a purchase for this game. It's so frustrating to play because of the jank physics and inconsistent frame rate. You can alleviate much of this frustration by enabling the infinite lives cheat and making liberal use of the rewind feature, but at that point you'll realize there's less than an hour of gameplay to actually experience. My playthrough was one of my shortest recording sessions ever. I suppose there's an argument to make that this game is best played as originally presented, and you're supposed to spend the time getting good at it. But again, the physics and frame rate are so frustrating that it's really hard to find any reason to want to do that. All of this is entirely out of the control of Ratalaika and the porting team. The game is, as best I can tell, presented as it originally was. The one fault they do have is in their emulator, namely their options. For both this and Scourge Hive, you can remap buttons if you're playing on keyboard, but if you're playing on a gamepad, you are forced to stick with their predetermined layout. On a game like Scourge Hive, that's not too bad, but on a game like Dinoland, it's very upsetting. Dinoland is a pinball game that was made for a console with a very limited controller. In the style of many pinball games of the time, the left flipper was activated by pressing a direction on the D-pad, and the right flipper was activated by pressing the rightmost face button. This was always very wonky, but on a console like the Game Boy or the Genesis, it is understandable. On a modern emulator though, this is very much solvable. You can simply map the buttons on your controller to any button the original console would have used. In fact, when testing on BlastEM, I did exactly that and mapped the flipper buttons to the left and right bumpers on my gamepad, a very intuitive layout that's been standard for basically every pinball title since the Game Boy Advance. Ratalaika's Dinoland release has no such option, and while I can learn to press the D-pad and face buttons for the flippers, I don't appreciate being denied the option to find a preferred layout. All that being said, there are some things that stuck with me about Dinoland. By far, the thing I like most about Dinoland is the sound design. The music is pretty catchy and appropriately sets the mood for each table. The dinosaurs also make some fun sounds when you hit them. The theming of the game is also something that really gets me excited, and clearly the developer or publisher thought it was charming too, because the game manual is full of dinosaur facts. How cute is that? There really was something about the dinosaur pinball premise and the art style that had me hope this game would be something special. And it's because of this that I've been thinking a lot about this game. For those who don't know, I am a programmer by education. I went to school to learn how to make games. So, on occasion, I'll play a game and be struck by a mechanic or premise and start designing up ideas in my head about how to make the mechanic myself or how I'd design around a similar mechanic. In playing this game, I kept thinking to myself that this could be a very fun time if not for the poor performance, and so I kept conceptualizing my own Unity engine remake of the game. Remakes and ports seem to be my go-to suggestion for fixing a game's problems, but I really was taken by this game and want to see it in a better form. Hell, if someone gave me a modest budget and access to a 3D artist, I'd remake the game myself. I don't know, Ratalika, give me a call if that sounds interesting. If any of you watching find that interesting, something ko-fi.com/MsFox8008. If enough people were to pitch in and support these videos to make this my full-time job, I'd certainly have more time and energy for things like making video games again. But that's more of a pipe dream right now, so maybe just support me if you'd like to see your name in the credits. Other than that, I don't have much else to say about Dino Land. This game is frustrating, but it's cute and has a unique charm that still stuck with me. Honestly, I would not recommend buying this game unless you really like your games rough around the edges. I do think my preferred method of play, if I ever were to pick the game back up, would be through BlastEM, so I could properly remap the controller. But if you are going to emulate the game, you should buy it first, since Ratalika went through the trouble of making it available in the first place. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll come back for the next video. In the meantime, I'm going to look up images of pinball tables. For normal reasons, of course.